Everyone calls it sulking. Achilles gets his prize taken away by Agamemnon and storms off to his tent, and for 9 years of scholarship that's basically been the verdict. Wounded pride, a tantrum, the greatest warrior in Greece throwing a strop, but Homer doesn't say that, not once. What Achilles actually does, what the Iliad actually describes, is closer to a soldier refusing an illegal order from a commander who just proved he cannot be trusted. That's not sulking, that's a crisis of loyalty, and it's one we still haven't figured out how to solve. Let's set the scene because context here is everything. It's somewhere around 1200 BC, give or take a century, historians are still arguing, and a coalition of Greek city-states has been camped on the shores of Troy for 9 years. 9 years. Think about that. These men left their homes, their families, their lands, sailed across the Aegean, and have been sitting in tents on a foreign beach for nearly a decade. Morale is not great. The army is organized as a coalition, not a unified force. Each king brought his own men. Each king answers to Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, commander of the expedition, but only loosely. This is not a modern army with a clear chain of command. It's closer to a coalition of warlords who've agreed to cooperate as long as it suits them. Achilles leads the Myrmidons, his men. He brought them here, they answer to him. And he, technically, answers to Agamemnon, technically. Now, who is Achilles, actually? Not the movie version, not the impossibly sculpted hero who broods and fights and dies beautifully. The Achilles of Homer is something stranger and more interesting than that. He's the son of Peleus, a mortal king, and Thetis, a sea goddess. That semi-divine status matters, not because it makes him invincible. The dipped-in-the-stick story comes from much later myth, not Homer, but because it places him outside the normal social order. He exists slightly apart from ordinary men. He knows he's going to die young. Homer makes this explicit. Achilles was given a choice, a long, forgettable life or a short life and eternal glory. He chose glory. That choice is the engine of everything, because here's what that means. Achilles is not fighting for land. He's not fighting for Helen. He's not even really fighting for Agamemnon. He is fighting for his name, for kleos, the Greek concept of glory, honor, the fame that survives you. Kleos is the only immortality available to a mortal man. Take that away from him, or worse, insult it publicly, and you haven't just wounded his pride. You've attacked the only reason he's here at all. Keep that in your head. We're going to need it. The trouble starts with a priest. Krios, a priest of Apollo, comes to the Greek camp to ransom his daughter Briseis, who has been taken as a prize of war by Agamemnon. He offers gifts. He appeals to the gods. Any reasonable man would hand the girl back. Agamemnon refuses, publicly, humiliatingly. He sends the old priest away and keeps the girl. Apollo, who takes the disrespect to his priest personally, as gods do, sends a plague on the Greek camp. Men start dying, 9 days of it. The army is disintegrating. Achilles calls an assembly. He's not the commander, that's Agamemnon, but he has the standing to do this. He brings in a prophet, Calchas, who reveals the cause. Give back the girl, that's it, simple. Agamemnon is furious. He'll give her back, fine. But he demands compensation. He will take someone else's prize, and he singles out Achilles. Now, stop here. Why Achilles? There are other kings, other prizes. Agamemnon could have made a general demand and let the coalition sort it out. He didn't. He went specifically after Achilles. Some scholars think it's because Achilles called the assembly in the first place, that Agamemnon saw it as a challenge to his authority and wanted to put him back in his place. That reading makes a lot of sense. This isn't just a dispute over a woman. This is Agamemnon asserting dominance, publicly, in front of the entire army. And what does Achilles do? He almost kills him, literally. He draws his sword. He's halfway to cutting Agamemnon down right there in the assembly when Athena appears, visible only to Achilles, and physically grabs him by the hair. She tells him, "Stand down. Your time will come. The gods are watching." He sheathes the sword. But he doesn't shut up. He gives one of the most devastating speeches in all of ancient literature. He tells Agamemnon to his face in front of everyone, "You are a coward who sends other men to die for a war you profit from. You take the prizes while better men do the bleeding. And then, when it suits you, you strip away what little reward they get." He announces he's withdrawing, his ships, his men, his fighting power done. And then he goes to his tent. Here's where most retellings go wrong. The image we have is Achilles sulking, petulant, self-absorbed, refusing to fight while his friends die around him. A great man brought low by vanity. That's the reading that stuck. But look at what Homer actually has him doing in that tent. He's playing the lyre. He's singing, specifically singing the kleos, the famous deeds of heroes. He and his companion Patroclus are sitting together in the tent, and Achilles is playing music and singing stories of great men. That image is doing a lot of work. This is not a man distracted by rage. This is a man who has withdrawn from a situation he considers unjust and is literally sitting with the concept of what it means to be a great man. He is meditating on kleos while the men who fail to honor it fight outside. He is also, and this matters, completely consistent. When Agamemnon sends an embassy, 3 of the most respected men in the Greek camp, including Odysseus and the great Ajax, to offer enormous compensation and beg Achilles to return, Achilles refuses. Not angrily, he hears them out, feeds them, treats them with courtesy, and then he says no. His argument is this: Agamemnon can offer all the gold in the world, it doesn't matter, because what was taken from him wasn't a woman or a trophy. It was public recognition of his worth, and you cannot buy that back. Either you see a man's value or you don't. A chest of gold after the fact just means you're afraid of what happens without him. It doesn't mean you respect him. Ajax, big, blunt, honest Ajax, loses his temper at this and says essentially, "Fine, be unreasonable, stay in your tent. Your friends are dying, you're quibbling over honor." And Achilles says, "Yes, because if honor means nothing, then neither does dying for it. And if that's the case, why is any of us here? That's not sulking. That's a philosophical position, a brutal one, but a position." What breaks Achilles isn't guilt, it isn't reason, it isn't argument, it's Patroclus. While Achilles sits out, the Greeks are getting destroyed. Hector, Troy's greatest warrior, is carving through the Greek lines. Ships are being burned. The camp itself is under threat. Patroclus comes to Achilles. He's not angry. He's not making an argument. He's weeping, not for himself.
So look, I used AI to structure the original episode, and honestly, it got the framework right, but missed something crucial. The whole thing about mênis versus regular anger. That's real. That matters. But with that, the AI couldn't capture is just how alien this honor system actually was. I kept saying Achilles' reaction made sense to the original audience, like it was just a cultural difference we could easily bridge. That's not true. Even for Homer's time, Achilles is extreme. The story works because he's operating on a level of honor, logic that's almost inhuman. What really hit me when I went deeper, and this didn't make it into the original, is that Achilles knows exactly what he's doing when he withdraws. He's not just protecting his honor, he's orchestrating a very specific kind of revenge. He wants the Greeks to fail badly enough that they'll come crawling back, but not so badly that Troy actually wins the war. Because if Troy wins, his chance for eternal glory dies with them. It's this incredible calculated emotional manipulation, and Homer shows us every step. The AI summary made it sound like righteous anger. It's righteous anger, sure, but it's also cold, strategic, thinking wrapped in divine wrath. The other thing that surprised me, kleos isn't just fame. It's closer to a kind of immortality that you have to earn by making other people remember your story. But here's what's terrifying. It only works if the right people survive to tell it. Achilles isn't just gambling with his own life. He's gambling with the entire cultural memory system. If he miscalculates and everyone dies, his kleos dies too. The Iliad, as we have it, comes from Homer, probably 8th century BCE. That's just where the archaeological record gets solid. The story itself is definitely older, probably centuries older. You can see the layers if you know where to look. There are details about bronze working and specific types of chariots that Homer's audience wouldn't have recognized because they're from the actual Bronze Age collapse period the war is supposedly set in. Some of the catalog of ships in Book 2 mention cities that were already in ruins by Homer's time. What's fascinating is how the story traveled. The Cypria, which is mostly lost now, covered what happened before the Iliad starts. The Little Iliad covered what happened after. We've got fragments, references in other works, but most of it's gone. And every region that picked up the story changed it. In some versions, Achilles isn't Greek at all. He's Scythian, or from somewhere around the Black Sea. There are very different versions where he survives a war, marries Helen, and rules the islands of the blessed. The detail that almost every modern retelling drops completely is Achilles' horse, Xanthos and Baleos. They're immortal gifts from the gods. And at one point, Xanthos actually speaks to warn Achilles that he's going to die. Not necessarily. The horse opens its mouth and delivers a prophecy, which to today's terms kind of sounds strange. Then the Fury strike is silent again. It's the moment of pure supernatural terror in the middle of what's otherwise a very grounded war story. And it shows you just how far outside normal human experience Achilles really is. Troy, the 2004 movie, understood that the honor system but made Achilles too modern, too relatable. He's angry about justice in a way that the 21st century audiences can immediately understand. That's not what's wrong exactly, but it's not the alien calculation Homer shows us. The BBC's 2018 Troy series actually got closer. Their Achilles feels genuinely dangerous, like he's operating by rules that don't quite make sense to anyone else, including himself. Sometimes. Hades, the video game, does something interesting. It makes Achilles' post-death existence about him trying to reconcile who he was in life with who he wanted to be. Same with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where you can actually meet him in the underworld and he's basically trying to work through his regrets. Both games get this story isn't really about the war, it's about what glory costs. There's still an oral tradition in parts of Greece where they sing versions of the Achilles story, but it's mixed up with folk tales about more recent wars. I heard one where Achilles fights the Ottomans. Same emotional structure, honor violated, withdrawal, terrible cost, final recognition that glory and happiness aren't the same thing. I think we keep telling the story because it's about the gap between what we want with our own choices to mean and what they actually cost. Achilles gets everything he wanted. Eternal fame, the perfect heroic death, poetry, pottery that lasts thousands of years. And Homer won't let us forget that it wasn't worth it. Not for him. Not for anyone he loved or who loved him. Not really. Maybe a little bit different than what he expected. But he chose it anyway because the alternative was being forgotten. And maybe that's not a Bronze Age problem at all. And maybe many of us think about as well. Will we be remembered? And how and by whom? Thanks for listening.
Stand, held his position, refused to pretend that what happened to him was acceptable. And in the end, he went back anyway. He went back because of love, not principle. Patroclus pulled him back to the war that killed him. Maybe the lesson is that principles are clean and love is messy, that we can hold a line for honor and still be broken by something simpler. That feels pretty human to me. Next time, we're going to look at the man who actually won the Trojan War. Not the one you think. Odysseus gets all the credit for the horse, but the real story of how Troy fell is stranger and darker than that.